Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're taking on syntax. We're going to demystify some pretty complex grammar rules by looking at sentences like their literal architectural building blocks. It's honestly like a giant Lego set. Once you actually know what each piece does, you can build absolutely anything. Here's our roadmap for today. First, what exactly is a clause? Then, we'll look at independent and coordinate clauses, unpack dependent clauses, explore those somewhat rebellious non-finite clauses, and finally, snap the whole shebang together. All right, let's jump right into section 1. What is a clause? Every house needs a solid foundation, right? Well, in syntax, that foundation is the clause. Basically, a clause is a group of words that's got two key things, a subject and a finite verb. It functions as a single unit within your sentence. And the really cool part is, a single sentence can actually have one, two, or even a whole bunch of these distinct units linked together. Some can stand totally on their own, and others, well, they definitely cannot. Moving on to section 2, independent and coordinate clauses. Let's start with the absolute strongest brick in the pile, the independent or main clause. This guy can stand entirely alone as a complete sentence because it expresses a 100% full thought. Take a look at the example. She finished the project. Boom. Perfect self-contained thought. You've got the subject, she, the verb, finished. It doesn't need any backup to make perfect sense to the reader. Now, these independent blocks actually come in a few different moods, depending on their job. You've got declarative statements, like she left early, interrogative questions, like did you arrive, imperative commands, close the door, and exclamatory ones, what a surprise that was. But no matter the mood, they are all strong, freestanding main clauses. Okay, so what if we want to take two of those equal freestanding blocks and stick them side by side to make something bigger? That is where coordinate clauses come into play. These are two or more independent clauses of completely equal weight, glued together by coordinating conjunctions. You know, words like and, but, or, so, yet, for, and nor. Here's a perfect example of that. She wanted coffee, but he preferred tea. You can clearly see the equal partnership here. She wanted coffee is our first independent clause, and he preferred tea is the second. And they are flawlessly joined by that tiny little conjunction, but. Neither clause is bossing the other around. They're just two equal architectural pillars. Section 3, understanding dependent clauses. Let's see what happens when we introduce the add-on blocks. Check out this comparison. On the left, our rock-solid independent clause. She finished the project. But on the right, when the concert ended. See how that just leaves you hanging? It clearly cannot stand alone. It desperately needs to attach to an independent clause inside a larger sentence just to make sense. So these dependent add-ons actually come in three main flavors. First up, noun clauses. These act exactly like a standard noun block. They can be a subject, an object, or a complement. Take a look at this. What she said surprised me. That entire chunk, what she said, is actually serving as the subject of the sentence. Or look at the object example. I know that he is honest. That whole clause is the direct object of the verb know. It's kind of brilliant when you think about it. Next, we have the adjective or relative clause. This dependent block acts like a decorator. It modifies a noun or pronoun to give us more detail. For example, the student who studied hard passed the exam. The clause who studied hard zooms right in on the student, telling us exactly which one we mean. Same thing with the book that you lent me was excellent. The chunk that you lent me is acting as a restrictive relative clause modifying the book. The third flavor is the adverbial clause. Just like regular adverbs, these modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. They give us the juicy context by answering questions like when, where, why, or under what condition. For time, we have we left when the concert ended. For condition, if it rains, we'll stay home. And for concession, although he was tired, he continued working. They basically set the whole scene for the main independent clause. All right, section 4, non-finite clauses explained. Let's talk about the grammatical rule breakers. So earlier, we firmly established that a clause absolutely has to have a subject and a finite verb, right? But wait a minute, what happens with those verb forms that end in ing or start with to? They don't really have tense in the normal sense, but they still somehow hold parts of our sentences together. Enter the non-finite clause. These are structures that contain non-finite verbs, like an infinitive, to plus verb, an ing participle, or a past participle, and they usually don't even bother with an explicitly expressed subject. Technically, they act a lot like phrases, but they function in a beautifully clause-like way because they can take their own objects or modifiers. Let's put two of these rule breakers side by side. First, an infinitive clause showing purpose. To win the prize, she practiced daily. And second, a participial clause showing cause. Shocked by the news, he sat down. These show perfectly how non-finite blocks act as these sleek, elegant support systems for the main clause. They give us rich detail without the heavy baggage of a full subject and finite verb. Section 5. Putting it all together. It's time for the grand finale. Before we build our final sentence, here's a quick recap to show how these blocks stack up. We've got our independent main clauses, the only ones that can fly solo. Then our dependent noun, adjective, and adverbial clauses acting as specific parts of speech. And lastly, those non-finite clauses doing a ton of heavy lifting without a finite verb. Now watch how this complex multi-clause masterpiece comes together. When the bell rang, students who had finished early left, and the teacher announced the homework. Let's break it down, piece by piece. First, an adverbial clause setting the time, when the bell rang. Then an adjective clause dropping right in to modify the noun, who had finished early. And finally, all of that gets snapped right onto two coordinate independent clauses, joined by and. Students left, and the teacher announced the homework. It all just clicks perfectly into place. When you actually understand this grammar taxonomy, it totally changes the game. By mastering independent, dependent, and non-finite clauses, you gain complete control over the rhythm, detail, and impact of your own writing. So looking at your own work, how will mastering these building blocks change the way you construct your next masterpiece? Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.